Here's the big difference. This is a big part of the mindset. The traditional way to borrow money is to have the thinking that whoever's lending the money makes the rules and is the underwriter and sets the terms. That's traditional thinking. But in this world of private money, guess what? We, instead of asking for a mortgage, we're offering a mortgage. So we are our own underwriter. We make the rules. We set the term. We set the interest rate. We are offering a return on money, and therefore we are our own underwriter.
Hello, welcome to the Nightfire Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Jay Connor. How you doing today, Jay?
Hey, Daniel, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for inviting me along to talk about my favorite topic, that being private money, because private money's had more of an impact on my real estate business than any other strategy that we've incorporated.
Private money is one of those things where everybody, if you can get that one thing right, you can do everything else in business and real estate.
Oh, for sure. And private money and raising private money is really, really easy when, of course, you know the steps to take.
Oh, there you go. Well, we're going to cover that today. Steps to take. I'm excited about this conversation, Jay. What part of the country are you from?
So I'm in eastern North Carolina, right at the southern tip of the Outer Banks, in a small town called Morehead City. And we're here at the Atlantic Beach Ocean. And only 8,000 people in Morehead City. We're 3 hours north of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And our total target market's only 40,000 people.
Wow, that is a small town. That's a very small town. I've been in North Carolina a few times. It's been a long time, though. It's probably been like 7 or 8 years since I've been through North Carolina at all.
Well, it's beautiful here. We got the beaches here on the coast and we got the mountains as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique place in the United States for sure, because you definitely do have all that. Well, let's talk a little bit about how long have you been raising private money, and let's give a little people a 30-second synopsis, and then we can kind of jump into the episode.
Sure. Well, I started investing in single family houses here in Eastern North Carolina all the way back in 2003. And from 2003 to 2009, those first 6 years that I was investing in real estate, the only thing that I knew to do to get funding for my deals was go to the local bank or go to the mortgage company and apply for mortgages for my real estate deals. But all that changed in January of 2009 when I was cut off from the banks. So it was during that month that I had to find a better and quicker way to get my deals funded.
Absolutely. It seems like no better time than the present in 2009 to definitely get your deals funded.
Yeah, because all the banks were cutting off real estate investors and funding was drying up overnight. But I was introduced to this world of private money, and oh my lands, Daniel, what a blessing in disguise. In those first 90 days after getting cut off from the banks, I was able to raise $2,150,000 in new funding that I didn't have. So it really was a blessing in disguise getting cut off from the bank.
Well, pressure forces you to adapt, and you're forced to do things you never thought you'd wanted to do or needed to do, you know?
That's true. That's true. Well, and it was out of necessity. I mean, I either had to find a different way to fund my deals or I was simply going to be out of business. I mean, I remember it like I was yesterday. I was sitting here at this desk. I called up my banker, and his name was Steve, and I had two houses under contract. I thought I still had a line of credit at the bank, but I learned very, very quickly I didn't. I told my banker about these two houses under contract, and he told me that, well, they were not loaning money out to real estate investors anymore. And I said, Steve, what in the world are you telling me that you're cutting me off? I said, we've had a great banking relationship here for 6 years. I've never been late on payments. I got a great credit score. And he said, we're not loaning money out to real estate investors. And so I hung up the phone, Daniel, and I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do? And so I want to share, Daniel, with you and your audience a very powerful question that I ask myself. And, the power's in asking the right questions.
Yep.
And so I asked myself, I said, Jay, who do you know? And it's not how, it's who. I said, Jay, who do you know that can help fix your problem? And by the way, these people running around saying every problem's an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. Let's face the facts. But that problem did become an opportunity. So when I asked myself, who did I know that could help fix my problem of being cut off from the local bank? I immediately thought of Jeff Blankenship, a dear friend who was living in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. And I called up Jeff and I told him what had just happened. He said, well, Jay, welcome to the club. And I said, well, I'm not sure I want to be a member of that club, but what club are you talking about? He said, well, that's the club of having the bank shut you down. He said, my bank shut me down last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to get your real estate deals funded? And he says, well, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He said, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how an individual can just transfer with no tax consequences a retirement account over to a self-directed IRA, and they can then loan money out to us real estate investors, and the money we pay them is either tax deferred or tax free. I said, Jeff, I don't have a clue what in the world you're talking about. I said, what is private money? He said, well, there's a gentleman down in Jacksonville, Florida by the name of Ron LeGrand who can tell us about private money. I said, well, what is it? He said, I don't know, but Ron said we can get a lot of it really, really fast. I said, okay. So that was my first real estate investing seminar that I went to in February of 2009. And oh boy, did I learn about private money. I came back home, Daniel. I decided I was not going to ask anybody for money. I wasn't going to run around chasing people or trying to chase money. No begging, no selling, no persuading. The first thing I did was get my mindset straight. I tell people all the time, if you want to be a great capital raiser and you're just starting out, you got to own the real estate between your ears. That's where you start. So no pitching. You see, Daniel, I've never pitched a deal to anybody for them to fund since I've been using private money for my deals. And the reason that works is because I separate the conversations between sharing with people the opportunity of being a private lender and then having a deal for them to fund. The big secret sauce is this, Daniel. I put on my teacher hat, which says private money teacher. So instead of chasing money and begging and selling and persuading, I took on the attitude of just sharing with people the opportunity of being a private lender, the kind of interest rates that I would pay, how they're protected, without associating a deal with that conversation. And here's a writer downer. Desperation has a smell to it. Desperation has a smell. The worst time to be raising private money is when you need it for a deal. Daniel, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard the guru on stage that's teaching real estate investors say something to the effect of, oh, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up. You ever heard that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the most stupid thing I ever heard. I mean, what's the money going to do? Rain out of clouds or something? Is like a box of money just going to show up on your front door step because you got a deal under contract? Has money got legs? Is money going to like run after you? And so it makes so much more sense to me to have the money lined up first, knowing where the funding's going to come from when you get a deal under contract. And so think about how much more confident people are going to make offers when they've got the money burning a hole in the back of their pocket. I want to share with you, Daniel, a very, very short, simple script as to exactly what do I say to my private lenders when I have a deal for them to fund. I always get my deals funded, and I never ask for money, and I never pitch a deal. So the best way I can illustrate this, Daniel, is to do a little simple role play with you. And let me do the setup here with just a couple of assumptions. First of all, let's just assume hypothetically that you and I have known each other for quite a while and we go to church together. So we already know each other. We got the likability. We got the trust factor in place. Secondly, let's also assume that I've put on my teacher hat and I have taught you about the private lending opportunity. You know that I pay 8%. You know that the maximum loan to value is 75% of the after repaired value of a house. So you know the program, and you've told me you like the program. The third assumption, let's assume that you had a $150,000 retirement account in a 401k at a previous employer that you worked at, and you weren't happy with the kind of returns you were getting. So let's also assume that I have introduced you to the representative at the self-directed IRA company that I recommend. And you've moved that $150,000 over to the self-directed IRA company that I recommended. And I told you that I would put your money to work for you just as soon as possible. So now you're waiting for me to put your money to work. So I call you up, you answer the phone, we have a little chit chat. Here's exactly what I say to Daniel in this scenario to get my deal funded. I call this the good news phone call. And here's how the good news phone call goes. I call up Daniel, we have a little chit chat, and then I say, Daniel, I've got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house in Newport, North Carolina that I just put under contract. It's got an after repaired value of $200,000. Now, the funding required for the deal matches up to what you have in your retirement account. It's $150,000. And closing is going to be next Tuesday. I'll need for you to wire your funds to my real estate attorney's trust account by next Monday. I'm going to have my attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing in this example is ask Daniel, do you want to fund the deal? Of course he wants to fund the deal. And the reason Daniel wants to fund the deal and he's excited about it is for three big reasons. Number one, Daniel trusted me to move his money over to the self-directed IRA company that I told him about. So he's already moved his money over based on my recommendation, and he loves the program. The second reason Daniel wants to fund my deal is he knows I'm not going to bring a deal for him to fund unless it matches the underwriting and the criteria of the program that I already taught him. Did you hear the figures? I told Daniel I got a house under contract with an after repaired value of $200,000, and the funding required for the deal is $150,000. That is 75% of the after repaired value. Now, that's not 75% of the purchase price. That's 75% of the after repaired value. That's why I'm always going to bring home a big check when I buy a property without having to take any money to the closing table. The third reason Daniel is ecstatic about funding my deal is because he's not making any money until I put his money to work that he moved over to the self-directed IRA company. So notice, unpack what I just shared. I didn't come to Daniel with a deal for him to fund when I first taught him and shared with him the opportunity. I taught him about how he could make high rates of return safely and securely. I learned he had retirement funds he wasn't happy with. I introduced him to the self-directed IRA company that I recommended. He moved the money over. He waited for the good news phone call. I called him up. I told him about the deal, and then he funded the deal.
Makes it seem so simple. A lot of people try and rush the conversation of education on the front end. What's like the timeline? I know it's going to be individual for every investor, but like how long does it take to find a new investor, kind of have that teaching education part of the program and teaching
Yeah,
them what the program is to actually them funding a transaction?
sure. Well, by simply following my easy steps of teaching, exposing people to this world of private money. You see, Daniel, I've got 47 private lenders, and not one of them ever heard about private money or private lending until I shared the opportunity with them.
Hmm.
And so I have members of my private money community that are doing the business the way I do it, and many of them get $500,000 and more within less than 30 days of implementing my systems. I have one lady that recently downloaded my private money $1 million scripts. And in 4 days, she got over $600,000 in private money. So the money can be pledged very, very quickly, for sure, less than 30 days.
How are you targeting these people that potentially have money? Because I feel like it's always there's a lot of money out in the marketplace, whether it's privately held or fund held, but a lot of people struggle with the targeting.
Yeah, well, there's three categories of where private lenders are. The first category is your own connections, your own network, what I call your warm market. The
Mhm.
second category are existing private lenders. The second category is what I call your expanded warm market. Because, if you want to scale your business, you're going to run out of your own connections sooner or later.
Absolutely.
So, how do you expand your network? And I teach that in detail. And then the third category of private lenders is what I call existing private lenders. Those are individuals that are already loaning money out on real estate from either their investment capital and or their retirement funds. So let's talk about each of those categories. So the first category is your own warm connections, your own network. Who do you go to church with? They're at church. What social organizations are you in? They're in your cell phone. You've already got their contact information. Ask yourself the question: where do you go regularly every week, every day, every week? Who are the people that you see regularly all the time? All that is your warm network. And then there's your expanded network. One of the quickest ways to blow up your network very, very quickly overnight is to do what I did, which was join BNI, which stands for Business Networking International. Even here in little old Morehead City, North Carolina, we started up a BNI years and years ago. Well, that organization is in place for the purpose of giving each other referrals. Very, very quick way to blow up your network. And then existing private lenders, well, where in the world do you find those? Now, these are individuals that are already loaning money out from their investment capital and or their retirement funds to real estate investors. Now, with existing private lenders, I'm not going to be putting on my teacher hat and teaching them about private money. They already know about private money
Yeah.
because they are a private lender. So I'm not going to be teaching them the opportunity of what I pay and how they're protected. That's going to be a negotiation conversation because they already know what a private lender is because they are one. But where can you find these individuals? Well, interestingly enough, over 70% of account holders at self directed IRA companies want to loan you money. They want to loan real estate investors money. They want to be a passive real estate investor by loaning money out from their retirement account. So, how do you meet these people? Well, most, if not all, self directed IRA companies have networking events where they'll have real estate investors wanting to borrow money and their account holders come together for networking events. And so that's one place you can find existing private lenders. My company actually has software, which is called the Private Lender Data Feed, that we update every month. There's over 12,000 private lending closings a month nationwide. And in our private lender data feed, you can actually go in, put in a zip code, and find all the private lenders around any zip code in the nation.
Interesting. So you're using information, regulated information. Is this through like personally recorded notes and deed of trust on assets?
Yeah, it's all public record.
Public record information. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did some research on uh, that strategy alone. Just looking at public record recorded notes, and yeah,
Right. Yeah, and that strategy works, but I much rather be a teacher, right? And
yeah,
expose this opportunity to people that have never heard about it. I mean, right now, today, Daniel, as we're recording this episode, It's on average less than 3% return on a certificate of deposit at the local bank.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, it was over 5%, but it's still coming down quickly. And so you come along and offer somebody 8%, like I've been doing since 2009. Well, that's more than 5%. That's more than 3%. And it's not an unsecured note. It's just like them putting money in the bank, getting an 8% return. I pay no points. I pay no origination fees, and they love it because it's secured by real estate, just like putting money in the bank. But instead of earning, a 0.5% in a savings account or less, or 3% or less in a 7-month CD, they're earning 8% and they love it.
A lot of people, they have this misconception that their personal finances, credit score are hindrances to them getting private capital. How do you teach and educate people to overcome those instances?
Yeah, well, I can tell you where that comes from, Daniel. It's because a lot of real estate investors are misled into thinking private money is the same thing as hard money.
Yeah.
And hard money is not private money. Hard money lenders, and by the way, I'm not poo pooing hard money lenders. Some of my best friends are hard money lenders. But the reason real estate investors are misled or confused about that is a lot of private lenders call themselves private lenders, and they're not. A private lender, by my definition, is an ordinary human being that's loaning money out to us real estate investors, either from their liquid capital or their retirement accounts, right? A hard money lender typically is institutional money, which means the hard money lender or broker has gone out and raised money from investors for them to invest money in their fund, their hard money lending fund. Then the hard money lender turns around and loans that money out, raises the interest rate, charges 12% or 14%, and charges points or origination fees. And so the hard money lender is a middle person, right? They are a broker. They've raised money to lend out to real estate investors. Whereas with private money, it's a one-on-one transaction between the real estate investor, the borrower, and the private lender. So as a result, I've never had one of my 47 private lenders, Daniel, ask to see my credit score. They've never asked to see an appraisal. They've never asked to see a comparative market analysis. They've never, and on top of that, here's the big difference. This is a big part of the mindset. The traditional way to borrow money is to have the thinking that whoever's lending the money makes the rules and is the underwriter and sets the terms. That's traditional thinking. But in this world of private money, guess what? We, instead of asking for a mortgage, we're offering a mortgage. So we are our own underwriter. We make the rules. We set the term. We set the interest rate. We are offering a return on money, and therefore we are our own underwriter. We're not, getting on our hands and knees and saying, please fund my deal. No, turn that around 180 degrees. We're offering an opportunity to ordinary people to get high rates of return safely and securely in a way they never heard about before.
That's it. That's it. Um, do what like education are you giving them? Your book? Are you giving them pamphlets, flyers? Are you meeting with them on Zoom? How does those conversations like start and continue on?
It depends on how the conversation starts. So let me share with you how I got my first $500,000
Let's do
in
it.
private money. It was on a Wednesday night. My wife, Carol Joy, and I, we've been an active member of the Morehead City Church of Christ for many years. And after I'd been cut off from the bank and I came back home and I put my program together that I wanted to offer ordinary people on getting high rates of return, I knew what I wanted to offer. So we went to Bible study on a Wednesday night. I walked in the foyer. I was looking for a gentleman named Wayne. Wayne and I had known each other for some time. I walked up to Wayne and I said, Wayne, I'd like to visit with you confidentially after Bible study tonight. Have you got a few minutes? He said, sure. So we got together after Bible study. We went down to the nursery. I closed the door. And here's exactly what I said to Wayne. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was the original Zenith television dealer. If you don't know who that was, you're too young to remember life before Walmart came to town. But anyway, I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town, and I need your help. Now, there's a magic phrase right there. I need your help. I said, Wayne, you know everybody. I need your help. I said, here's how I need your help. I've now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only to people I know and trust, and I'm paying insane high rates of return. When you run across somebody that's complaining about the low rates they get in CDs at the local bank and the volatility of the stock market, would you refer them to me and I'll tell them about what I've got going on? Well, Wayne looked at me and he says, well, Jay, what have you got going on there? And I said, oh, Wayne, are you saying that you might be interested? He said, well, I might be. I said, why is that? He said, well, we're not making much money in the local bank in a CD, and we're losing money in the stock market. He said, what kind of rates are you paying? Or what kind of return are you paying? What kind of insane rates are you talking about? And I said, well, Wayne, that sort of depends on the deal. I said, what sounds high to you? He said, well, I'm making 3% in the local bank, which is what it was in 2009. He said, I don't know, 5 or 6% sounds pretty good to me. I said, Wayne, I can't pay you 5 or 6%, but I can pay you 8%. He said, well, put me down for $250,000. So that next afternoon, on Thursday afternoon, I went to his and his wife's home and I explained the whole program, the interest rate that I pay, how they're protected, how they can get their money back in case of an emergency. How is it a conservative loan to value, not borrowing more than 75% of the after repaired value? How I'm going to name them on the insurance policy as the mortgagee, how they're going to get a deed of trust to secure their note. And you know, Daniel, after 2 cups of coffee, that $250,000 became $500,000. So let's unpack what just happened. I didn't talk about any deals. I didn't ask them to fund any kind of deal for me. I simply talked about this world of private money, the kind of rate of return they can get, and how they're protected. And so when I left their home that afternoon, I told them I would put their money to work for them just as soon as possible. So then I called them up a week later with the good news phone call. So in that scenario, that was one on one. That was one on one, right? What's another scenario? Well, it's called one to many. One to many. Well, how can you expose this one to many? Well, my very first private lender luncheon that I put on, that's a private money, private lending event where I invited 20 people to lunch, my own connections, go to church with them, know them in the community. I invited them to lunch. I paid for their lunch, bought them lunch. I had my CPA there. I had my realtor there. I had my real estate attorney there. And so I had my credibility team there. So I fed them lunch. And then I took about 30 minutes in my little PowerPoint presentation and I taught them the private lending opportunity, just like I did to Wayne and his wife. But
Mm.
instead of with one person, it was 20 people. I raised $969,000 at that one event. And so at the end of my talk there at that luncheon, I just left a little interest form on the table and they just notated if they were interested in a one-on-one to really more details or have any confidential conversations. So then through those one-on-one visits, that's where the close to $1 million came from. So that's one to one. That's one to many. And you know, when you, when private money becomes a part of you and that's who you are, then as you're just going about your daily life, you're having a conversation with somebody. I love did you know questions. And so how can you like bring up private money in a conversation? Well, you and I could be having a visit or, you know, we could be at Starbucks or whatever, having a cup of coffee. And I could say something along the lines of, by the way, Daniel, did you know that there's a way that ordinary people like you and me can earn unlimited money per year tax free? Well, in all likelihood, you're not going to know the answer to that question. I mean, you do. You're the star of this show. But an ordinary person is not going to know what I'm talking about. And they'll say, no, what are you talking about? They heard tax free and they heard unlimited. Well, my follow up question to that would be, well, have you ever heard of self directed IRA companies? In all probability, they've never heard of that. So now that opens up a conversation for me to teach and share something with that individual that they've probably never heard about, that being Roth IRAs and how you can use a Roth IRA and a self directed IRA company to earn tax free, unlimited per year income. And so then after we talk about that, I say, well, by the way, have you got investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? So it's just a very natural conversation with no pitching and no selling.
No pitching, no selling. How I know it's changed a lot since COVID, and belly to belly stuff is a lot harder to do these days. I think it's opening back up to that, but how can people do it virtually?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can invite people to a Zoom party. You can invite people to a Zoom to where the question is, who else wants to earn high rates of return safely and securely? And so you can just call up people and invite them to a Zoom hangout to where you can share the information with them. Everybody's looking for ways to get better rates of return. I'll tell you another great place to do it, in addition to BNI, is the Rotary Club. The Rotary Clubs are always looking for speakers and presenters on topics that they've never heard about. Well, I've got a different PowerPoint presentation that I share with my community members that I teach and share this information with. And we've got this PowerPoint called the Civic Group presentation. Well, that presentation doesn't teach the private lending opportunity. That presentation teaches how someone can take $100, put it in a self directed IRA company, and then get an assignment fee, a wholesale deal for $20,000. And now your IRA just made $20,000 in tax free income because all you did was use $100 of your Roth IRA. So you teach that information, and then you say, by the way, at the end, if you're not interested in negotiating deals and finding real estate deals, there's this thing called private money and private lending to where you can be a passive investor. And if you're interested in learning about that, scan the QR code, and then you can learn in 16 minutes what private money and private lending is all about.
Yeah. I like the unique. I like the no pitching part because it's hard to get people to invest because they can smell the desperation, like you said earlier.
Oh, absolutely. The most stressful and worst time to be trying to raise private money is when you need it for a deal you got under contract.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, you wrote a book. You have a podcast. Can you talk about that briefly, just for resources?
Sure, Daniel. I'd love to give your audience a free gift, and that is my national best-selling book, which is called Where to Get the Money Now. And this is not an ebook. This is an actual book. The subtitle is How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Ever Relying on Traditional Banks or Hard Money Lenders. I'll autograph the book and I'll ship it priority mail. The book is free. It's $20 on Amazon, but don't spend $20 on Amazon. Free book, just covers shipping. You can pick up the book at www.jayconner.com/book. Again, that's Jay Conner. I'm an ER, not an OR. JAYCONNER.com/book. I'm also going to include 2 tickets valued at $3,000. I'm going to include these 2 tickets to my private money conference live event that I do 3 times a year. And then in addition to that, I'm going to let everybody know about my podcast. I'm now in my 8th year of podcasting. The name of the podcast is Raising Private Money. Imagine that. Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. It's on all the platforms. Twice a week, I release some early Monday mornings and Thursday mornings. Twice a week, I release episodes where I am interviewing other real estate investors who have raised private money and how they go about getting private money for their real estate deals.
Awesome. That's an amazing opportunity for people out there, for sure. Amazing opportunity. What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
Somebody else's quote would be, quote unquote, your destiny is determined by the books you read and the people you meet.
There you go. For everybody here, thank you, Jay, for coming on the show. I appreciate all the information you gave to us. Definitely got a lot of gears turning in my head, and hopefully a lot of my listeners as well. For everybody here, go like, share, subscribe. You know where to find it. jconner.com/book. Get his free book, best paid shipping, and definitely check out his podcast. For everybody here, we appreciate you coming on, Jay.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. God bless you.